factory workers of the 70s. If you have these symptoms, it could be hearing degeneration. Do you remember the deafening roar of those factory machines from the 1970s and 80s? Can you still hear that constant humming in your ears, even when everything around you is completely silent? If you worked in manufacturing, construction, or heavy industry during those decades, what I am about to reveal might explain why you were struggling with hearing problems that doctors can't seem to fix. 87% of factory workers from that era developed irreversible hearing damage. But here's what's shocking. Most of them don't even know it yet. The symptoms are so gradual, so subtle, that by the time you notice them, the damage has already been done for years. If you've been dismissing that ringing in your ears as just getting older, or if you find yourself constantly asking people to repeat themselves, you need to keep watching. What I'm about to share could change everything you thought you knew about your hearing health. The industrial boom of the 1970s brought unprecedented noise levels to American workplaces. Factory floors reached decibel levels of 90 to 110 decibels, DALY equivalent to standing next to a chainsaw for 8 hours straight. What workers didn't know was that prolonged exposure to anything above 85 decibels causes permanent, irreversible damage to the delicate hair cells in your inner ear. These microscopic hair cells, called stereocilia, are responsible for converting sound vibrations into electrical signals that your brain interprets as hearing. Once damaged, they never regenerate. Never. This is why factory workers from that era are experiencing what audiologists call noise-induced hearing loss, a condition that was largely ignored by workplace safety regulations until the 1990s. But here's what's truly alarming. The damage doesn't stop when you leave the factory. It continues to progress silently, year after year, affecting not just your hearing, but your balance, cognitive function, and even your cardiovascular health. How many people understand this hidden connection between industrial noise exposure and the health problems they're facing decades later? Dr. Raymond Carhart, known as the Father of Audiology, conducted groundbreaking research at Northwestern University between 1945 and 1975 that revealed the true extent of occupational hearing damage. His studies followed thousands of industrial workers and established the scientific foundation for understanding noise-induced hearing loss that we still use today. Dr. Raymond Carhart's research methodology was revolutionary for its time. He used pure-tone audiometry to measure hearing thresholds before, during, and after workplace exposure. His team documented that workers exposed to 90 decibels for 8 hours daily showed measurable hearing loss within just 6 months of employment. More importantly, he discovered that the damage accelerated exponentially, meaning the longer you worked in these environments, the faster your hearing deteriorated. The preparation for his landmark study involved testing over 5,000 factory workers across Illinois, Michigan, and Ohio. He measured not just hearing loss, but also tinnitus severity, balance problems, and cognitive processing speed. The results were so alarming that they directly influenced the creation of OISHA hearing conservation standards decades later. But what Dr. Raymond Carhart discovered about the progression of this damage will shock you. Let me tell you about Robert Thompson, a steel mill worker from Gary, Indiana, who participated in Dr. Raymond Carhart's study in 1968. Robert was 42 years old when he first noticed a slight ringing in his ears after his shifts at Bethlehem Steel. Like most workers of his generation, he ignored it, thinking it was just part of the job. Over the next 18 months, Dr. Raymond Carhart's team documented Robert's hearing decline week by week. The high-frequency hearing loss started first. Robert couldn't hear his wife calling from upstairs anymore. Then came the speech discrimination problems. Conversations in restaurants became impossible to follow. By month 24, Robert was experiencing severe tinnitus that kept him awake at night, and his balance had deteriorated to the point where he couldn't walk in straight lines. What made Robert's case particularly significant was that Dr. Raymond Carhart documented not just the hearing loss, but the cascade of secondary health problems that followed. Robert developed high blood pressure, chronic fatigue, and what we now recognize as early signs of cognitive decline. His wife reported that he became increasingly isolated, irritable, and depressed. The hearing loss wasn't just affecting his ears. It was destroying his entire quality of life. Now, think about your own experience. Do you find yourself turning up the television louder than your family prefers? Have you stopped going to restaurants because you can't follow conversations in noisy environments? Do you feel exhausted after social gatherings because you had to concentrate so hard just to understand what people were saying? These aren't just signs of getting older. These are the progressive symptoms of noise-induced hearing degeneration that started decades ago in those factory environments. The ringing in your ears, that tinnitus, isn't just annoying background noise. It is your damaged auditory system desperately trying to compensate for the hair cells that can no longer function. But here's where it gets even more serious. Recent research has revealed that untreated hearing loss accelerates cognitive decline by up to 40%. Your brain, working overtime to process damaged auditory signals, begins to steal resources from other cognitive functions. Memory, attention, and processing speed all suffer as your brain struggles to make sense of the distorted sound information it is receiving. The tragedy is that most people wait an average of 7 years before seeking help for their hearing loss. 7 years of social isolation, relationship strain, and accelerating cognitive decline, all because they didn't recognize the warning signs or thought nothing could be done. Dr. Patricia Williams, an audiologist at Johns Hopkins University, recently completed a 20-year follow-up study of industrial workers from the 1970s. Her findings were remarkable. Workers who addressed their hearing loss early with proper amplification and auditory rehabilitation maintained significantly better cognitive function, had lower rates of depression, and preserved their independence much longer than those who ignored the problem. One of her patients, James Martinez, a former automotive plant worker from Detroit, sought treatment at age 65 when his grandchildren complained he was too loud during family dinners. Within 6 weeks of getting properly fitted hearing aids and completing auditory training exercises, James reported dramatic improvements not just in his hearing, but in his energy levels, mood, and overall quality of life. The protocol that Dr. Patricia Williams developed specifically for industrial workers includes 3 crucial components: comprehensive audiological evaluation to map the exact pattern of noise-induced damage, precision hearing aid fitting with noise reduction technology designed for industrial hearing loss, and auditory rehabilitation exercises to retrain the brain's sound processing capabilities. But the benefits extend far beyond just hearing better. Patients following this protocol report improvements in their balance and spatial awareness, reduction in tinnitus severity by up to 60%, decreased mental fatigue, and improved concentration, better sleep quality as the brain no longer struggles to process distorted sounds throughout the night, and renewed confidence in social situations they had been avoiding for years. The key is understanding that your auditory system is interconnected with your balance system, your cognitive processing center, and even your cardiovascular health. When one component suffers damage, it affects the entire network. This is why addressing hearing loss isn't just about hearing better. It is about preserving your overall neurological health as you age. However, there are important considerations you need to understand. Not all hearing aids are designed for the specific pattern of noise-induced hearing loss that factory workers experience. The damage typically affects high frequencies first, creating a very specific audiological signature that requires specialized programming. Additionally, if you have certain cardiovascular conditions or take specific medications like high-dose aspirin or certain diuretics, these can interact with your existing hearing damage in ways that need professional monitoring. It's crucial to work with an audiologist who understands occupational hearing loss, not just age-related hearing changes. The treatment approach is completely different, and using the wrong strategy can actually make your symptoms worse. Never attempt to treat severe tinnitus or sudden hearing changes without professional evaluation, as these can sometimes indicate more serious underlying conditions that require immediate medical attention. The most important thing to understand is that while the hair cell damage from your factory years is permanent, your brain's ability to adapt and compensate is remarkable. With the right approach, many people experience significant improvements in their functional hearing ability, even decades after the initial damage occurred. The key is acting now, before the secondary effects of untreated hearing loss create additional complications. Imagine being able to follow conversations in restaurants again, enjoying movies without subtitles, and feeling confident in social situations instead of exhausted. Picture sleeping through the night without that constant ringing, having the energy to engage with your family, and maintaining your independence as you age. These aren't unrealistic hopes. They're achievable outcomes for people who take action. The work you did in those factories helped build America, but it came at a cost to your hearing health that nobody warned you about at the time. You deserve to understand what happened to your auditory system and what can be done about it now. The technology and knowledge available today would have been considered miraculous just 20 years ago. Dr. Raymond Carhart's legacy lives on in the understanding that hearing health is fundamental to overall well-being, cognitive function, and quality of life. His research showed us that while we cannot undo the damage from occupational noise exposure, we can absolutely minimize its impact on our lives moving forward. If you recognize yourself in what I've described today, don't wait another day to seek proper evaluation. Share this information with others who worked in industrial environments during those decades. They need to understand these connections too. Your hearing health affects every aspect of your life, and you have more options available than you might realize. The most important step you can take right now is to acknowledge that what you re-experiencing isn't inevitable aging. It is the result of specific occupational exposure that can be addressed with the right approach. Your hearing health journey doesn't have to end with resignation. It can begin with understanding, proper evaluation, and evidence-based treatment that honors both the sacrifice you made in those factory years and the full, engaged life you deserve to live now.